Hi, we're out on our range today, and I have my Century Arms AK platform rifle. Now it's marked Century Arms 7.62 by 39 mm, Georgia, Vermont, and on the side is stamped VSKA. I have not owned this rifle for very long. I shot it enough to zero it, then I used it for demonstration purposes in a couple of presentations. So I really only have just a little over 100 rounds through it. But in those presentations, I got a lot of commentary from a lot of people expressing their disdain for this rifle. People telling me it was junk, people telling me it was garbage, people telling me how surprised they were that it hadn't blown up on me. So today, we're going to do a 1,000-round test of this rifle and see if we can shed any light on its quality or lack thereof. Now, this comes with a couple of caveats. One being, a lot of people have done presentations where they've reviewed this rifle and they talk about all these different things and tab A and slot B and the thickness of the metal. Okay, I don't care how much your trollop likes trunnions. I don't care if trunnions are really more fun than funyuns. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. The proof of the rifle is in the shooting. And we're going to discuss two things today. One, the accuracy. Two, the reliability. So I'm going to start by shooting a target and seeing what kind of accuracy I can achieve with this rifle. Then we'll shoot 1,000 rounds. I won't make you sit through shooting the whole 1,000. And then we'll shoot another target and see if our accuracy has changed. And the reliability we can judge through the process of shooting 1,000 rounds. So I've got a target set up at 100 yards. I will shoot that target prone unsupported. I have the rifle loaded with tool ammo, 7.62 by 39, 122 grain full metal jacket spear point. And let's see what kind of group I can get. And here's our group. One that's slightly off, probably just me. But, you know, that's a pretty good group. Why is it so far off center? Let me see if I can explain that. Well, that's a lot more centered, but why the difference in the location of the two groups? Let me see if I can explain that. So both of these groups are fairly good, and they really represent the amount of accuracy that I can get shooting prone unsupported with this rifle from 100 yards. But why are the groups in such different places? Okay, in previous presentations when I've used this rifle, you may have noticed that it hit a little bit high. So in preparation for today's presentation, I adjusted the sights. Now the way you adjust the sight on this rifle for elevation is by turning the front sight post. It's just screwed in, so you turn it clockwise, it goes lower, counterclockwise, it goes upper. I was hitting higher Therefore, I want the strike of the round to be lower, and you move the front sight in the opposite direction of where you want the strike of the round to go. So, counterclockwise to elevate the front sight. And as we see, I got my group about where I wanted for elevation. My aiming point is at the bottom of this white, so that's about right. So why did it move the strike of the round so far to the right? Because this particular rifle has a problem that's a common problem in AK platform rifles, and that is that the front sight post isn't straight. It's bent a little bit. Now, it was turned in such a way so that as I look at it, it looks straight to me, but to you, it doesn't. As I adjusted that, and I turned it back around, as I'm looking at it, it now looked about like that. Thus, the front sight post is farther to the left, makes the strike of the round go farther to the right. So I had to turn it back to a point where it's back to where, as I look at it, it looks pretty well straight, and now I'm hitting just a little bit high. My aiming point is still at the bottom of the white. But with this particular sight post in this particular rifle, unless I want to do a lot of adjustment and maybe get in there and bend it, that's about where we're going to be. Now, what I'll do is put up another target, go back 100 yards, and shoot that target prone unsupported, and let's see what kind of accuracy I can achieve on that. I didn't make you sit through watching me shoot this group, but this is 6 shots in no particular order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This lower one is a flyer, that's just me, and yes, that is very annoying when that happens. So this group was shot prone unsupported from 100 yards with my Colt AR-15A2H bar. This group was shot from 100 yards prone unsupported with the Century Arms AK. So with a rifle that has really a good reputation for accuracy, that's about as good as I'm going to do. Thus, under the same conditions, shooting a rifle that does not have such a reputation for accuracy, it puts this group in perspective. So we've discussed a little bit about accuracy. Now it's time to shoot our 1,000 rounds. I have a crate of 1,000 rounds of tool ammo, 7.62 by 39, 122 grain full metal jacket spear point that we purchased from Lincoln City Sporting Goods in Lincoln City, Oregon. Thank you. And I've got a bunch of magazines. I've got some polymer magazines. I've got some no-name foreign metal magazines. I even have our AK-47 banana mag. And I've got some knockoff of the knockoff 20-shot magazines. So we'll get all our magazines loaded up and we'll shoot our 1,000 rounds. And as I said, it won't make you sit through all of it, but maybe just some of it. So now we've put over 1,000 rounds through this rifle, and we'll talk a little more about that in a few minutes. But right now the short version is we discovered that our AK-47 banana magazine functioned excellently. So now we'll go back to the target and we'll see to what degree, if any, our accuracy has changed after this barrel has over 1,000 rounds through it. Now there's two things that are important to note. One, at the end of 1,000 rounds, I did a rudimentary cleaning on the rifle, concentrating on cleaning the bore. If we have any change of accuracy, we don't want it to be just because our bore is fouled. Two, it's now the next day. This rifle has had plenty of time to cool off, so we're not shooting with a hot barrel. Okay, let's go to the target. Now this impact off to the right, yes, that really is just me. So I'm going to have to say no loss in accuracy. So after shooting 1,000 rounds, I can't feel or hear anything that makes me think the rifle's been rattled loose. It obviously didn't rattle our sights loose or deleteriously affect our accuracy. But let's talk about reliability. Okay, fair warning. This is a boring part of the presentation where all I do is talk, and you're really going to have to put up with my speech impediment, my Shatner-esque pauses, and everything else. All right, that having been said, prior to today's presentation, we fired some rounds through this rifle, and we fired a whole bunch of rounds with today's presentation. And so far, I have well over 1,000 rounds through this rifle, and the total number of malfunctions I've had has been 0. So with those results, what should be the bottom line is accuracy, good. Reliability, very good. However, both of those statements come with some caveats. Now, when I talk about accuracy, sometimes I'll use the phrase by AK standards. And when I do, I find there are people who get very angry indeed. And they will argue about how AKs are 1 minute of angled rifles, and they'll talk about how they knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy, and some people can even show some demonstrations of it. Okay, before everybody gets too bent out of shape, if you have the right AK platform and you load it with some kind of customized hand loads or match grade ammo, and then you can use it under controlled conditions, such as you've got it in a vise, or you're at an indoor range, or maybe you have a shooter that's a lot better than me, 1 minute of angle groups with some AKs under some conditions are something that I consider very possible. However, when I'm talking about shooting this rifle, I'm talking about something that I call real shooting. We're not on a range with a covered area and shooting benches and that kind of thing. And under real shooting conditions, we have to talk about something that I call the accuracy trapezoid. And that is the conditions, the rifle, the ammo, and the shooter. Now, under these conditions, we have to deal with different light, and we have to deal with wind. We have this rifle and the ammo I'm using, and probably the weakest link in all of this is the shooter. And so the groups I'm getting are groups that I'm going to say are pretty good by AK standards. Now, when I talk about the reliability, over 1,000 rounds, 0 malfunctions, I'm going to say yes, it's a reliable rifle. But the caveat is that that does not speak to the long-term durability of this rifle after 5, 10, 20,000 rounds. And we have to keep that in mind, and we'll talk about that at some later date when we have that many rounds through it. But all of this leaves us with one big question. If today's presentation shows that this rifle is a pretty good one, and other people have similar presentations and have come to similar conclusions, where does all the hate mail come from? Or people telling me that it's junk, that it's garbage, that it's trash, that they're surprised that I got over 50 rounds through it before it fell apart. Where does all that come from? Okay, to answer that comes with a caveat that I did some degree of research, what I was able to do, and came to some conclusions. And so everything I'm going to tell you is based on the research that I did and the conclusions that I came to. Different people may have different information and come to different conclusions. But that having been said, I looked at some online sources, I read what some people were saying in forums, I looked at some of the presentations that other people have done in this format, and as near as I can put together, Century Arms imports AK platform rifles, but then they started making them. And 10 plus years ago, the rifles they were making had a lot of quality issues. But since then, they've changed a lot of things and eliminated most, if not all, of those quality issues, and now we have the rifle that I'm using. Recently, Suits Double Aught, my apologies if I'm saying that wrong, did an evaluation of the Century Arms rifles, and he seemed to think that it was very good. James Yeager has quite a few of them that he called rental guns that students use, and so according to him they have many, many thousands of rounds through them, and I can't get his exact words, but what he said was to the effect of they've had just about as close to zero problems as you could get without actually being zero. He considered them to be very good rifles. I also discovered that in the commentary people were making, both on presentations like this and in the online forums, there were lots of different comments, lots of different pro and con stuff, but virtually all of the comments were one of two types. People who thought the Century Arms rifle was great, and people who thought it was garbage. And something I noticed that was very interesting was that all the people who made great comments backed it up with some kind of statement. And they were different versions of, I think the Century Arms is great. I have one and I've got 5,000 rounds through it with no problems. I think the Century Arms rifle is great. I've had one for 4 years and no problems. I think the Century Arms rifle is great. I've used it in a couple of competitions and won. As where the people who are saying that it's bad will say things like, Century Arms is trash. Or, Century Arms is garbage. Or, Century Arms rifles are terrible. But no statement to back that up. And so the conclusion I come to is the people who are saying that are just repeating what they've heard from somebody else, and they're acting upon outdated information. Now, having said that, I'm sure I'll get a lot of commentary from people who will make things up to support their negative comments, and there's not much we can do about that. So, as always, don't try this at home on what you call a professional, and thanks for watching the Century Arms AK Platform 1,000 round torture test video.